Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Tracy Harris, and this is At Home in My Head, the podcast that explores experience and meaning and their impact on individuals and the broader society. Many years ago, I spent a year living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The highway system there is set up a little differently than what I was used to from living in Florida, and it's also different than the roads in Texas where I live now. In Florida and Texas, if you miss your exit, you can take the next one and circle back onto the highway to try again. It probably adds less than 5 minutes to your drive as long as there's not a traffic snarl. But where I lived in Pennsylvania, if you missed your exit, the next one might not be for another 50 miles. And if you took it, you might find there's no way to get back onto the highway going the other direction. It was incredibly frustrating. And as I talked about in a prior episode, I'm not an anxious driver, but I can become one when I'm driving on unfamiliar roads. Remember as well that these were the days before GPS and cell phones, so if you were out driving, you may or may not be able to find a way to easily right yourself. It was not uncommon for me to be inside my car, literally screaming, sometimes crying, out of sheer frustration at the horrible road planning in this area. And I have a lot of stories I could share with you about the nightmares I experienced on Pennsylvania roadways, a few of which were in horrible snowstorm conditions. But outside of a couple traffic tickets, there's only one story I recall specifically from my time that year in the North. I can't tell you where I was going or why. I just remember I needed to take the highway, and I was dreading it. So I enlisted a friend who was also living there temporarily, named Tony. She was raised in the hills of Tennessee and was one of the most thoughtful people I'd ever met. I still remember being angry about some of the problems I was having with my car brakes and how a local shop was having trouble fixing my car. I was unhappy with the service when Tony's husband suggested I bring Tony along with me to talk to the shop people. I asked why I would bring Tony, and he told me she was a certified brake mechanic. I thought he was kidding, but he was serious. She was, in fact, a certified brake mechanic. Who knew? And she had that very Southern girl accent. Her apartment was decorated in black and white cowhide pattern because that's what she loved. So this was who was with me on whatever this errand was that night, and as always, I ended up taking a wrong exit and couldn't find the way back to the highway. And we were lost, miles from home, while it was getting later and later and darker, and we're driving deeper and deeper down roads that we don't know where they're taking us or if it's closer or further from our destination. We're just trying to get home. But here's the thing. I wasn't screaming, and I wasn't crying. I was laughing. I was laughing to tears, next to Tony, who was also laughing to tears. The entire situation was absurd and ridiculous, and we both hated these roads, and we were having a shared experience of frustration, but because we weren't experiencing it alone, it was funny. Frustrating, but hilarious. At one point, it was very late, and I stopped the car outside a farmhouse with a big pumpkin patch out in front. It was before Halloween, and we joked about stealing pumpkins, but we didn't have the guts to do it because we were afraid we might get shot. We were so far out in the country. There is something, though, about having another person with you, another body. When shit hits the fan, if you have the right person there, someone who gets you, sometimes it can make the difference between laughing and crying, between joking and screaming. I can't explain it, but situations that can make me explode become not just tolerable, but almost fun adventures when there's a friend there experiencing it with me. My guest today is Tiana Sweet, who works with neurodivergent communities to provide support and tools to help create a better quality of life for people. She posted about something called body doubling, and I had never heard of it. But when I started to read her posts and watch her TikToks, I immediately remembered my experience with Tony. It's not exactly what Tiana provides, but something in my brain thinks it's probably working based on similar principles and mechanisms about what I experienced that night on the irrational roads of the Pennsylvania countryside. And with that, let's get to my conversation with Tiana. Today, I am really excited to have with me Tiana Sweet, who is a friend of mine that I know from Facebook. And recently, I saw some posts by Tiana that piqued my interest about something called body doubling. And I wasn't quite sure what that was, so I started following more of what she was saying about it and looking more into it. And I thought this is something that is not just a fun and kind of cool thing, but is also something that might be helpful to people. So I figured, why not invite Tiana on to talk about what it is that she does and why she's doing it and how this is helpful to people like Tiana and her clients. So welcome, Tiana.
Hi, thank you.
You're
Thank
very
you for
welcome.
having me.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. So why don't you go ahead and you can explain this better, I think, than I can explain what you do. So go ahead and take it and just tell the audience what it is you do and how you got into this, a little bit of history here and who you are.
I am a peer support specialist, which is providing moral support, emotional support to people who have similar lived experiences that I've been able to survive. And I'm a neurodivergent resilience advocate. So the type of peer support specialist that I am is I help people who have similar neurodivergences to myself. Now that's a whole thing. People don't know what that means, neurodivergent. So neuro refers to the brain and divergent means you are different from typical people. When you hear the word neurodivergent, usually it almost always refers to someone who is autistic or ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And I am ADHD.
Okay.
But it also encompasses other things. Neurodivergent just means neurologically different from typical. It's easier for me to explain when comparing it to the meaning of neurotypical, which means having a brain that is centered and privileged by society. There you go. One more thing you didn't know you were privileged having. Being neurodivergent is not always a disadvantage either. So Magnus Carlsen, for example, the best chess player on earth, is neurodivergent. Having a high IQ, another example, perfect pitch, having an eidetic memory. These things also make you neurodivergent. It's just that for a lot of us, being neurodivergent can be debilitating in a very sick and ableist society. Having a neurotype or a psychological trait that impedes your ability to access an equitable quality of life.
My first thought was there are people that are very capable that have neurodivergence, but at the same time, that capability requires more effort for them. So it's still an impediment, even if they're able to mask and able to perform in a way that they are seamless to somebody that's on the outside. On the inside, it takes them more work to achieve that. So it's still an impediment, even though they may be achieving, because you have to ask yourself, what would they be able to achieve if they didn't have to work that hard just to appear typical?
Just to appear typical. So I think referring to it as an impediment deflects onus away from an ableist society where it belongs, and it puts it on the disabled person. We must perform neurotypicality, which is also known as masking. A lot of the time that's for our survival. That's not voluntary. We're forced to mask so that we don't make the neurotypicals uncomfy. We're less safe when the neurotypicals are uncomfy. We face alienation and ostracization and bullying. And then later there's something called compliance fatigue, and masking causes that, and it's extremely harmful. So yes, if we weren't forced to mask or conform to ways that appeal to people who just don't get it, they don't understand that stimming is just normal, we would be a lot more capable. The word disability is pretty controversial, and it's a relative term as well. So depending on who you are, you may or may not agree that it's a disability. You may or may not agree that you're neurodivergent. It's a very personal choice, and no one else can tell you what it is.
That whole concept of the disability label is an interesting thing to me, because I find that people shy away from it because of ableism.
Disability is not a bad word.
If you don't put a ramp in front of a building, that person is less able to get into the building if they can't walk, if they can't negotiate stairs. But if you put that ramp, now they have the ability to get in and it's fine. So even with a
Exactly.
physical disability, it's still a social impediment. Once you have accessibility provided, it's no longer a disability. They can't do the stairs, but they
Exactly.
can get into the building the same as anyone else. And that's what matters.
Amalgrame on TikTok, Amalgrame. They said, if you built a world for everyone, there would be no disabilities. That is so blatantly true to me. Disability is relative. The term disability has a connotation of being inferior in an ableist society. This term special needs is also problematic. There is no such thing as special needs. There are human needs, and some humans need a little bit more support than other humans. There's
Right.
higher low support needs. When you are neurodivergent, the world is absolutely not set up in ways that include a sustainable, healthy way for you to live. We have to make it up ourselves. Statistically, there are far fewer neurodivergent elders than other demographics.
What's the reason for that?
One of them is compliance fatigue, where we constantly have to mask in order to make the neurotypicals more comfortable. Depending on the traits that you have as a neurodivergent person, the less able you are to, whether that's hold on to relationships, function at home, function at work. Stress and being in distress so often causes you to have a shorter life as well.
I also wonder if younger generations don't have higher rates of diagnosis. Maybe people are diagnosed more as we learn more about it.
I just typed into pi.ai, which is
Mm-hmm.
probably my second, sometimes first favorite after ChatGPT AI program. And they say neurodivergent elders or older individuals with neurodevelopmental conditions such as autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, and others may appear less common for several reasons. Firstly, neurodivergent conditions were often underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed in older generations, what you're saying,
Yeah.
leading to a lack of awareness and support. Social stigma and misunderstanding of neurodiversity can result in people just masking their traits and
Mm-hmm.
literally hiding it.
Right.
And the stress and challenges of living in a neurotypical world can lead to
Mm-hmm.
burnout and mental health issues, which may shorten lifespan or reduce quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a combination.
Yeah, sure. That
Uh,
doesn't surprise me. What is the distinction, or is there a distinction between a neurodivergent diagnosis and mental health issue?
Well, there's no formal diagnosis called neurodivergent. Neurodivergent is more of a cultural, social term, and mental illness is a clinical term. The question is sort of like asking, what's the difference between being a human and being a mammal? All
Sure.
humans are mammals, but not all mammals are human. Neurodivergent is an umbrella term for a broad, diverse range of atypical brains. So you can be neurodivergent without being mentally ill, but if you're mentally ill, that's just one of the many, many, many ways there are to be neurodivergent. So I don't actually have any medical license or anything like that to speak on mental illness too much. Neurodivergent traits don't always have to be pathologized. Sometimes it literally is just a difference in neurotype rather than an illness. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of experiencing the world, relating to reality and relating to others. A neutral difference. It's not better or worse. And neurodivergent people just existing, not performing neurotypicality, are pathologized for it. It's a really complex question, Tracy. I really had to think a lot about this and research it myself because it's really important that those of us that are privileged enough to get a formal diagnosis, which unfortunately is not enough because it's not everyone, we absolutely need them in order to access a lot of our support needs. Medication, accommodations, treatment, whatever we might need. So, speaking for myself, sometimes it is definitely mental illness as well, and that's okay too. You know, the Jiddu Krishnamurti quote, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Our environment plays a huge role in all of this. Yeah, and this society, unfortunately, the term mental illness is stigmatized. The mental illness label, like many other types of disability, can be extremely dehumanizing depending on who's using the term and in what context. The systemic categorization of people in this way is and has been used to justify heinous treatment of others. But my goal in embracing this new language is just to increase understanding and empathy and help nurture a more humane and compassionate society, no matter what kind of brain you have, regardless of neurotype, abilities, disabilities, class, sex, gender, race, orientation, all the things, all the marginalized things. You deserve to have all of your support needs met and access to an equitable quality of life. You are not disposable. You are not inferior. You are not less deserving of anything just because you're not what's expected.
Why don't you explain a little bit about what is CareWeb?
So in this context, it's a neurodivergent peer community on Discord. It's free. We're a huge network of friends who do body doubling and peer support. We have mutual aid and movie nights and game nights, and we just support the hell out of each other every day, 24/7 from all over the world. And we don't have to share any private or sensitive info because it's over Discord. So everything is secure and encrypted. We love that. There's a lot of overlap between the disabled community and the neurodivergent community. So our care web is made to accommodate all types of neurodivergent people and their needs. If you do decide you want to go to the link, you'll see we're a Discord server called Body Double Besties. We get together like every single day for body doubling and we clean, shop, walk our dogs, like either online shop for groceries or go to the grocery store with our earbuds in
Cool.
with body doubles, like kind of supporting us. The term body doubling just refers to being more productive, more focused, and more motivated to knock out whatever tasks are on your to-do list when you have company. And that company does not have to be a cheerleader or a drill sergeant. They don't have to do anything. It's just this act of being perceived. It's harder to let yourself off the hook when you have someone who is either keeping you company while you work or doing their own work alongside you. We declutter our homes and any tasks that are like too arduous, too boring, or just intolerable to do without the distraction of a companion. That's what we do together.
Well, how many people would you estimate are in this?
500.
Wow.
We also have movie nights and book clubs and game nights.
What does movie night in the CareWeb look like?
We vote on a movie or TV show and get together in the media meetup VC. VC in Discord lingo, VC means voice channel. There's a whole culture shock when you first get to Discord. So I made a little intro video going over all the vocabulary and lingo and stuff. It can be a culture shock, but I try to walk people through it. So we get together in the media meetup VC, aka voice channel. We vote on a movie or TV show. And sometimes we pick something that is really affirming to the neurodivergent experience. Or sometimes it's just some really amazing sci-fi or fantasy stuff. And we stream it together. And it's a good time.
Sounds like it.
That's what I am spending my life doing. I provide support, perspective, and emotional strength to help neurodivergent folks find ways of living sustainably. Body Double Besties is a global online neurodivergent care web of ADHDers, autistic folks, and tons of other challenging psychological or neurological traits, whether it's executive dysfunction or depression or anxiety, or even just loneliness. Contact, connection with other humans who want the same thing. We share support and resources for a better quality of life. One of my friends is an artist and she commissioned a piece in the care web. So that was really cool to see.
That is cool.
I feel like there was my life before I found body doubling and my life after. Like, I don't know how I got stuff done before body doubling. I realize on the surface, it sounds bizarre. Like, what do you mean? You need someone to hold your hand while you do stuff? Kind of, yeah. But the weird part is not needing a sense of connection to feel productive, motivated, and focused. I think the weird part is living in a society that is so hyper individualistic and incredibly alienating and isolating when the history of humanity, we've always been communal. We've always done our hunting and gathering and child rearing and sewing and engineering projects together. We're very tribal. We've always been. So I think this is a modern day adaptation to the need of a human to be part of a community. The people in my neurodivergent community, it's a global care web. And the main thing that we do on there is body doubling. It really is starting to feel like a family. It really is starting to feel like a valid family of interpersonal support. And I wish that was more normalized. We have this exaltification of the nuclear family. If it's not a husband, wife, and kids, it's not a valid family. Well, that's not my experience. These people, we do the dishes together like every day. And so they feel more part of my family than some of my biological relatives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's say I call you up and I say, I want you to do this with me. So what are we going to do?
The easiest way that eliminate a lot of issues of meeting up and finding a platform and stuff, I send you a Discord link, you tap the link, we're in a room together instantly on Discord. So I love Discord. We get to hop into rooms with each other instantly without exchanging phone numbers. We have screen names as well. So I'm T on there. We don't have to share each other's phone numbers or whole names or obviously addresses or email addresses or anything like that. So I feel pretty safe on there, talking with people in Australia and New Zealand and Africa and Europe. And it's nice because you can do a video call or an auditory only call, or it can be a silent call with or without video. And it depends on what you need it for. If what you need to body double for is super low cognition menial work, like folding clothes, for example, I could listen to an audiobook or a podcast or have a full-fledged conversation while my body is folding. With body doubling, it's this really weird phenomenon. It's a productivity hack. It's something that works for a lot of people with ADHD, but not all of us. It does work for some people that don't have ADHD. So it can work for someone who is grieving or has depression or issues with executive dysfunction. And executive dysfunction is you want to do the thing, you need to do the thing, you still can't do the thing. Before I found body doubling, it was, you got to push yourself, you got to force yourself, you got to try harder, you got to have willpower, you got to have motivation. With body doubling, I have to do none of that. I am engaged in a conversation without practicing any kind of discipline. While I'm engaged in the conversation, my body goes into this autopilot and just starts folding the clothes. I'm not even consciously thinking about it sometimes. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm chatting. And oh, by the way, on the side, I'm doing something important that I need to do. It's keeping someone company either while engaging in conversation or not in order to complete goals or tasks, knock out your to-do list together.
And you noted that it's not being enforcing and it's not being a cheerleader. Yeah. It's just being there chatting like a friend while somebody's doing something else. They're not even thinking about it. And then it gets done.
Being there, not even thinking about it. And then it gets done. Exactly. Yeah. They're not an enforcer. They're not saying, you better do this. They're not even saying, you can do it. They're not a cheerleader. They're kind of perceiving you.
When I think about the 12-step programs and sponsors who are supposed to be supportive, I often hear the word also, having someone to be accountable to, but that's not what this is.
Not quite, no. So it's kind of interesting. They're like an equal. So I could say, oh, these are the 3 things on my to-do list, and we can check in every half hour to see how we're doing. But most of the time, we don't even need to do that. We notice that we are being perceived and we just get it done. It's easier. It's harder to let ourselves off the hook when we're being perceived. It is actually supported by neuroscience, anthropology. I just learned about this researching for this talk yesterday. All the way back in 1898, someone named Norman Triplett noticed a phenomenon and he called it social facilitation. So it's been studied. It's just social facilitation is the way the presence of others impacts performance,
Hmm.
whether good or bad. And I would say body doubling is social facilitation in a positive way because sometimes being observed can impede your productivity. If you're learning something new in front of an audience, you're going to perform less than if someone wasn't
I think this is one of
watching you.
those things. I think this is one of those things where trying to describe it makes it more complicated than it actually is. Because
Yeah.
if you think about it, how many times do people say, "Oh man, I have to go do this thing. I don't want to do it. This sucks. Hey, you want to go do it with me?" Like, come
Mm-hmm.
on,
Yes.
because we know different people have different tolerances, but so many people realize that if I can get someone to do this with me, it's not going to be as bad.
So mirror neurons, it's that thing that happens. There are a certain type of neurons in your brain where like you ever see someone yawning and it makes you feel like you need to yawn too.
Yep.
That's because of mirror neurons. It's this part of your brain associated with empathy as well. Before body doubling, what a lot of us would do is go on YouTube, find a YouTube video of someone cleaning their kitchen and have it playing in the background while you clean your kitchen.
Hmm. Okay.
The mirror neurons just kind of jumpstart your
Well, I mean,
productivity.
people do that with working out, right?
Yeah, you have the workout video playing and it's easier for you to work out. Exactly.
I
That's
mean,
what
that's
body
the whole,
doubling
that's,
is.
isn't that Peloton, right? You got that trainer that's doing all the stuff with you and you're doing it too, and they're talking to you and they're pumping and you're
Yeah,
pumping and yeah.
exactly. And then another cool hypothesis of why it works, I heard from Dr. Lucille Isidora Torres, and she hypothesizes that for some of us, a lot of us ADHDers have issues with dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that kickstarts you and says, hey, let's do the things. Let's get our to-do list done. There's an issue with that in us where there's a gap from wanting to do it and needing to do it and actually doing it. So it's believed that that gap is issues with dopamine regulation or dopamine receptors. When you are engaged in a conversation and you're having some chit chat or engaging in background chatter, she hypothesizes that you're actually replacing the dopamine with oxytocin. It makes the task that's so menial and arduous and boring, it makes it pleasant. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's the neurotransmitter that makes you feel the warm and fuzzy feelings when you're having a good talk with a friend. And another part of this is from an anthropology perspective or even a clinical science perspective. Have you ever heard of the rat park experiment by Bruce Alexander?
Yes, I have, but why don't you go ahead and talk to folks about that?
Yeah, so he did that in the late 70s in British Columbia, Canada. There was an experiment done when you it's very cruel that we needed to do a science experiment to prove this, but you put a mammal, a rodent, a sentient little cute rodent in an enclosed, isolated box with two options, a bottle of normal water and a bottle of laced water, laced with drugs. If you keep the rodent in isolation, it usually will choose the laced water over and over again until it dies from it. You take those same rodents and give them access to community and activities. They can mate if they want. They can run around. They can play. Then they almost always use the normal water. And if and when they do use the lace water, it is purely recreational. They
Hmm.
don't take it until they're dead. We literally need each other. Human beings have always been communal. Our psychology and our physiology is what it is because we have always been communal. When we were hunter gatherers, everything we did, child rearing, everything, it was together. And so it's super against the way our mind and physiology has developed to be in a society that is so conducive to alienation and isolation. So with the body doubling, it's just an easy way for us to have access to each other. We're not literally in the room together because it's an online community, but your brain doesn't know the difference between someone's face on a screen that you can hear and talk to versus someone actually in the room with you. So you still get all the benefits of feeling like you're part of a community or feeling that you are working with someone instead of having to do a boring task all by yourself. Everything in mental health that I have found, except for body doubling, you have to be patient. You have to be kind to yourself and you have to be compassionate to yourself and practice over time. And eventually you heal and things get better. Body doubling is the only thing in mental health I've ever found that has instant results. I'm on a phone call. I'm doing the close. In this call, Tracy, I have folded and decluttered just because I'm chatting with you.
I understand. I do that with long phone calls too. You get tired of just sitting and talking and you get up, you start doing things.
Also, being immersed in a community, evolutionarily speaking, is associated with being safer. So we are safer when we are immersed in a tribe or in a community. And when you're in isolation, that likelihood of dying is just so much greater. It's also worth noting that there are natural feelings of safety and well-being when you're immersed with other people. Not just because like you need to or out of obligation, but just you're in the background while I'm working and vice versa. We're being together because it's not a chore and obligation. We're just part of each other's day and we're part of each other's day in a way that helps us be more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even me, I'm not antisocial. I don't have a high need to like go out and do things, but that doesn't mean that I'm not interacting or engaging with people. I'm online all the time. I think you and I had talked about urgency, right? A need for urgency before
Mm-hmm.
this call today. It's amazing what I got done, right? I mean, this call started probably around 9:30 in the morning for folks, because I don't know what time you're listening to it or when I'm going to post it, but it started early in the morning, about 9:30. By the time I called you, I had already been to the store, picked up some stuff for the camp trip, gotten gas, came home, packed up some firewood. I mean, I was like finishing the coffee, watering the plants, like did everything I'm needing to do to prep. And then I was just like, hey, we're going to have to do this call. And I saw that you were online. I got on and
Mm.
sent you a note. And then I don't even know if you saw it, but when I was in the agenda, you were in the agenda. I saw you get on the agenda and I typed
Mm.
in, "Hi, Tiana," with a smiley face, but I didn't see any response. And I was like, I don't think that she saw me, but I was typing in the agenda
Oh,
for
you typed that in the agenda?
yeah, in front, because I knew
Oh.
you were looking at it. I don't think you saw it, but that's fine. But the point was, when I saw that you were online, because I know you're way earlier, you're in a different time zone, and so you're much earlier than I am. But you said you were an
Mm-hmm.
early riser. So I was kind of surprised that you were up that early based on me having 9:30 in front of me. But
Mm-hmm.
when I saw you online, I reached out and I was just like, well, let's do it. Let's do the call. And you were like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine. Cause I didn't know if you had other things you wanted to get done before that. But I mean, I had gotten done like a load of stuff because I knew I needed to get it done before
The
this call.
urgency.
Yeah.
Yes. That urgency is as a Kickstarter. Novelty is another one. Community is another one. Like there are these key tools and skills that we can use to get our stuff done when we struggle with executive dysfunction. The two types of body doubling that we have are chatty and silent. So for chatty body doubling, that's for low cognition, menial, boring tasks. You don't use the thinky part of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Folding clothes or doing dishes or decluttering, things that do not require a lot of imagination or analysis. You could just chat and chat and chat while your hands and your body do the activity. And then the silent kind of body doubling, that's for when you have to read or write or study or research. So for that, we typically do silent, sedentary, camera on body doubling. Camera can be on or off, doesn't matter, but we're usually running around. I have a necklace phone mount. When I'm walking my dogs or doing whatever activities, I mount my phone and I like to keep my camera on so people can kind of see through my eyes while they're doing their work. But other times it's just like being on a phone call in the 90s. There's no visual. We're just having a conversation, usually with earbuds. Being hands free is kind of a big part of
Sure,
it.
sure.
You've got to be hands free for it. And then the silent sedentary kind is usually muted because when you're using the thinky part of your brain, you can't really talk much or at all if you're reading or writing something. And that's silent sedentary camera on usually, but cameras are not required. It's just better. The mirror neurons work better when you can see your body double working as well. It's changed my life so substantially. Being the way that I am, I could not stand school ever since I was 10. And I started noticing, wait, this isn't good for children. Everybody thinks this is normal. This is weird. There's no critical thinking, individuality, creativity. This is so bizarre. What is going on? I would talk with my mom about it. She did her best. She would just say, just hang on until the summertime. Her most common phrase was, it's means to an end. It's means to an end. You can do it. Just grit your teeth and bear it. Summertime's gonna come. You'll graduate and you won't have to deal with this anymore. Just keep on keeping on, keep on keeping on. But that never ended. I've never been able to function like a quote unquote normal adult in this world because a lot of the time my symptoms are so damn debilitating. Going to school like that, I was conditioned for 10 months of anguish at a time. So as an adult, there would be like a switch going off in my head, or 9 months, I'm sorry. School is 9 months and then a 3 month summer. And then as an adult, 99% of my jobs, I would quit or get fired at the 10-month mark. So I had muscle memory of just bear it, bear it, bear it, bear it, bear it, bear it, bear it. And so I couldn't take it anymore. As someone with ADHD, some of the traits that I have are distractibility, impulsivity, hyperactivity, poor time management and organization. The emotion dysregulation is super debilitating because you can have a negative interaction with a family member and be just depressed for days. No job is going to tolerate that. A lot of ADHDers like myself also have difficulty following instructions and meeting deadlines. If it's extremely regimented, if it's super rigid, I'm not able to sustain it. I need a life with flexibility and diversity. I had to figure out a way to create this less structured life. And for me, what that looked like is starting my own business. And I also coached chess for an after school program. And so there were ways that I had to learn how I can participate in society and survive. It's not the same for everyone either. I have a kind of a funny story. My neurodivergence also impact my relationships. For example, 2017, Tracy, you and I had been Facebook friends for a while. And one day I asked you a question about feminism and you answered me. And it was this enormous long wall of text and I could not read it. Do you know that I was so embarrassed? I didn't talk to you for like 4 years after
I had no idea.
that. I think, well, I did take a Facebook hiatus as well in that time, but I did not answer you. I did not.
I mean, I
Um,
don't usually text people looking for an answer. If someone asks me a question and I answer it, I don't expect them to feel obligated to write back to that.
but now you can send me a novel and I copy it and I paste it into an app that reads it to me.
Right.
That is a huge accessibility tool.
Hmm.
Another one, I met Erica Alexander. Have you ever seen the show Living Single?
Yeah.
I idolized Erica Alexander on that show. She played Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, and I even went through this program. It's called Trial by Peers. It's for high school kids with a certain GPA. They can go into this program, study, take a junior bar exam, become a junior attorney, and defend and prosecute minors that commit misdemeanors in the state. You had a senior attorney that would tell you what case law to look up and everything. I had 3 cases in front of an actual judge, me, and of course, the actual senior attorney was there, and a jury of other teenagers.
Wow.
And I did that, yeah. And I decided I never wanted to be a lawyer because it's 99% reading and not a lot of actual imagination. It's mostly read, read, read. So I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. But Erica impacted my life so profoundly that I actually went and did that because of her and also Claire Huxtable. I met her when I moved to LA. Not only did I meet her, we became friends.
Wow.
Not only did we become friends, she mentored me for a little while.
Oh, that's cool.
That is the optimal, best possible case scenario of having someone you admire who has influenced you so much and then becoming friends and then they mentor you. That mentorship did not last because one of the things that she wanted me to do is learn writing and become a writer for television and movies because that's really how you can make a decent living rather than just acting. But in order to do that, of course, to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader and read all the greats. The first book that she urged me to read was Old Man in the Sea.
Oh, okay. I've read that.
So I've read Sister Soldier, Coldest Winter Ever. I've read Octavia Butler, everything I could have possibly gotten my hands on. I just devoured that from beginning to end nonstop. I could not read Old Man in the freaking Sea. And so the difference between Ernest Hemingway and these authors are they're Black women and they're talking about sci-fi or hood stuff. I can relate to that. I'm
Mhm.
interested. And the protagonist, a Black woman, imagining an old man in the sea, I couldn't. And like, again, I was so humiliated. Well, this was years before. I was so ashamed that I blew it. I blew the mentorship. I mean, we stayed friends, but because I couldn't read this book that I wasn't interested in, I lost that mentorship. And that was the opportunity of a whole lifetime.
That's rough
Yeah.
because as a young person, you probably didn't have even the language to express what was going on.
I had no idea I was even ADHD until I was 27. And that's a problem too. Boys, and more often than white boys, get diagnosed with ADHD, but girls not so much, especially Black girls, because we're just assumed to be a problem child more often rather than looking at it like we need some support.
Well, I've also heard that it's more common for boys to be diagnosed with autism than girls because girls are better at masking.
Better at masking. That's right.
Because
We're
we're taught
expected to
to,
follow
yeah, we're taught to
social norms.
conform, right?
Yeah.
Conform, be more submissive, drilled to submit more
Yep.
and not assert ourselves. And so we become more willing to take instruction and to do what we're told because you just get that kind of beaten into you.
Pretty sad because it's so true. Boys will be boys and girls, behave.
Restrain
But
yourself.
so all these different things I learned over the years, body doubling is one of them, and explaining it to someone who doesn't get it. It's like, what do you mean? You need someone to hold your hand? I mean, kind of, yeah. And I don't need you judging me for it. Ableism is so real.
Yeah, it is.
I started Body Double Besties as the Well community, which originally was a suicide prevention nonprofit organization. And then after running it for a little while, I learned that oppression, bigotry, and isolation are like the biggest causes of suicide. You have so many different ways that create this environment that's perfect for suicidal ideation. You have the demonization of any family that doesn't fit the nuclear mold. We actually refer to children, human children that were born to people who were not married as illegitimate children in this society. That makes no sense to me. We have this demonization of polyamorous families, of queer families, of families that are platonic. There is nothing wrong with a nuclear family. That's a beautiful, awesome, valid way of being a family, but it's just not the only way. It's not the only valid, correct way. Skinny blue eyes, blonde hair is beautiful, valid. Also, thicker than a snicker, dark skin, curly, frizzy hair, and brown eyes is beautiful and valid. Like everyone in their own little boxes, and you leave me alone, and you move over there, and this is my stuff over here, and you don't access my stuff, and I don't access your stuff, and we're just in our own little compartments. I guess there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's just not right for everyone. But when one way is exalted and
Right.
others are vilified,
Well,
that's
then you
a
have privilege, right?
problem.
That's what privilege is.
That's what privilege is.
And when you don't fit in, you have to work harder. This paragraph that you had in the agenda about the idea of how it's work to exist in a system that doesn't allow you to be yourself. If it's built for neurotypical people and you're neurodivergent, you may be able to navigate it, but it takes a whole lot more effort. And it reminded me of a conversation that I had with a friend of mine about his dog just yesterday. And he said that she has a training collar, and he explained how the collar worked. And he said it doesn't hurt her, but it does give her discomfort in certain situations. And while you're training the dog, you use this collar. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
enough about dogs. I don't have dogs. So, if this is like not a good thing to do, I apologize to people for, I'm not promoting this or making a judgment about it. I'm just saying this is what my friend told me. One of the things he said was that when they use the training collar and go out and do the training, the dog gets tires out pretty quickly, which is weird because
Mm-hmm.
generally the dog has lots of energy and is, non-stoppable because she's a very young dog. I said, well, training is work. Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
training is work. It's no wonder that it's tiresome. I mean, when you have to focus on a thing, when I'm learning something and I have to really focus on what I'm doing until I get to the point where I'm good at it and can just do it, it means you have to stop. You have to pay attention. What is the next step here? Did I do this right? Did I remember to do that? I mean, training doesn't even have to be like physically difficult. It is just this
Mhm.
idea of your body and your mind being in this tension state of worry about trying to do this right because you have to think about it so much, as opposed to when it finally becomes rote for you that you can just do it, or when you've done the steps enough that you just don't have to keep looking at the manual every time you do it, right? It's like, even this thing I
Absolutely.
bought today is I bought a charger. Like it's a charger that you can take with you. You don't have to plug it in. It charges
Portable
itself. And
charger.
yeah, okay, portable. Thank you. So I got this portable charger, and just that, I'm thinking to myself already, I'm going to have to sit down and look at the instructions on it. Cause at first I
Mhm.
just thought, oh, you plug the thing in, right? And then I'm looking at it. It's got a power button. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What is it? Just that extra step made me stop and say, okay, I need to stop. I need to read instructions here. I'm going to have, and it's just a charger for my phone. Right? I'm sure that once I do it, I'll be like, oh, that was very simple, and then I won't, but there's stress involved in saying, I need to learn how to do this. And what if I don't do it right? And what if the thing doesn't work right? Or if I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
handling it correctly. And until you get used to something, this isn't easy. And when an entire system is set up to make you dance around like that and walk on eggshells, it's wearisome.
Compliance fatigue is real. It's so insidious. It's a state of exhaustion, frustration, or apathy. A lot of people who are forced to follow strict rules, regulations, or guidelines for an extended period. So it causes decreased motivation, decreased performance, depression. And if you are neurodivergent, there's a high chance you are masking, depending on your job and environment. Some neurodivergent folks have to mask all day, every day. And a lot of people that are queer have to do the same thing. A lot of BIPOC people have to do the same thing. And in these types of marginalized communities, we have less elders in these communities. Compliance fatigue contributes to stress, to prolonged distress, which shortens your lifespan. It's very serious. I don't know what can be done about it in the world, like out there in the world, but in the community that I'm building, there's tons of autistic folks, tons of ADHD folks, tons of people with different support needs and different traits. And it's an environment where we don't have to mask for each other. If we could increase awareness about something like stimming, for example, some of us do hand flapping.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody stims. Stimming is a normal human trait, but if you do it too much, the neurotypicals get uncomfy with that. But if we were in a society that normalized it, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, Fred stims all the time when he's happy or stressed out. Just normal instead of, oh, what a weirdo, what a freak. The world that we're in is just so not inclusive. And so compliance fatigue is the result. My favorite thing is that all of this I learned from listening to autistic people, listening to other people with ADHD, really immersing myself in the neurodivergent community, understanding, I can be supportive of someone who has sensory stimulation issues, sensitivity to light and sound. I can be loving, kind, and supportive to someone who likes to flap or stim in other ways. I entirely attribute everything I learned from just getting acquainted with these amazing people. And I pretty much met all of them through body doubling together. We all need a body double in order to do our dishes, do our laundry, take out our trash, walk our dog. Sometimes having if you have earbuds in, you could just be on the phone and use it to get out of bed and go throughout your day and get ready and stuff. So sometimes you can get treatment, you can apply different tools and techniques to help you function better, but sometimes you need an accommodation. For example, I don't have keys in my life at all
Okay.
anymore. I don't use keys. My house is a code, my car is keyless, and I keep my fob chained to my wallet slash purse thingy. I use a clicker to get in and out of a gate that I live in, even though there's a door I can use a key for. If I have a key, there's a 100% likelihood that I lose it. I always say keys are against my religion. So that would be an
Okay.
accommodation. Some things can help you do the thing, and some things you just need a different way of doing the thing. So we're not inferior. Unfortunately, that needs to be said. All of that is a lie. And the truth is, there is nothing inferior about being different. It just means we have to do things differently than neurotypical people. I'm a certified smart recovery meeting facilitator, and it's really important to me that I spread the word about smart recovery. It's the only addiction recovery program that is accepted in courts for people to, who are mandated to go to meetings, that's accepted in lieu of 12-step programs. Because as much as they like to claim they're not religious, the 12-step programs are absolutely religious. Specifically, they are definitely built on the Abrahamic religions. It's the Yahweh character that we all know and love. That's what they're based on, as much as they try to claim that they're not. They definitely are. But SMART recovery, it's an acronym for self-management and recovery training. It's evidence-based. It's based on clinically proven modalities and methods and tools and skills for people. And it's not just substances, it's addiction in general. So any behaviors that you're doing because of addiction, this program aims to mitigate or eliminate that behavior.
You were using a quote that said something about the opposite of addiction is not abstinence.
Yes, it's connection.
Right.
I'm quoting Johann Hari, and this concept is gaining popularity. And that's why programs like 12 Steps work for so many people. Like, not to bag on them, they do have this whole community thing going on, and it's really important for people's survival. Connection. When I learned that, I was like, have you ever seen a movie and then there's this huge twist at the end, and then you think back to the whole movie? I thought back on the whole previous part of my life and I was like, wait, that's been true the whole time. The more immersed in family and community I was, the less I participated in undesirable behaviors, including addiction. I'm very used to being invalidated when I talk about things like this, because it sounds like it's not related and it sounds like it's not connected. Like, well, what does that got to do with body doubling? What does that got to do with handling your responsibilities and knocking out your to-do list? It doesn't seem like it's related on the surface. But what I'm trying to solve are problems created by the same thing, and that is systemic colonialism. This hyper-individualism under puritanical philosophies, the fact that every single aspect of what it means to be a human being, from even our sexuality to our romance to our being a parent to owning a pet, every single aspect of our life is commodified. And I first became consciously aware of that when I was 10 years old. I didn't know what I was experiencing, but I just could feel this is not good for me. That's when I started to get clinically depressed at 10 years old. I could just feel that this is not conducive to the well-being of a human, especially a child. Like, I went to school and I could just feel in my bones, like, this is not actually good for children. And then later as an adult, bam, I learned about elementary schools in the United States originated to produce docile factory workers. And I could feel that in my bones. Horace Mann, called the father of American public education, was instrumental in establishing a system of compulsory education in Massachusetts during the 19th century. And so the whole point of that was, during the Industrial Revolution, to literally make docile factory workers. It wasn't to nurture creativity or autonomy. Like, yeah, we'll teach you how to read, but read these things. No critical thinking, no nurturing of creativity, no sense of individualism. I didn't know what the heck. Like, I just knew that whatever everyone is calling normal is not normal. And I feel it in my bones. I just started to feel very other because everyone else seemed fine. And they could just do the things and go through their life like this is fine and this is normal. And I so could not. I just could not do that. And then I grew up a little more and I learned, like, the school to prison pipeline. And then I learned that I'm a chess coach as well. I teach chess. I have to have many different streams of income because I was never able to do the whole 9 to 5, punch a clock, have health insurance thing, unfortunately.
Right.
So I'm a chess coach as well as a peer support specialist and a smart meeting facilitator and other things. But when I go coach chess, it's usually at a public school. And I've never been to a prison, but I've seen prisons. They are identical from the cafeteria to the basketball court.
And you get your hours, right? Like here's your hours out in the yard where you get 20 minutes of free play time and then you come back in and it's more instruction. And yeah, even when you're little, here's when you nap, here's when you snack, here's when you eat.
Mhm.
It is very regimented, almost like military too.
It's the commodifying and the indoctrination to be commodified of humans. Like, I don't know how everyone isn't looking around like, what is this place? Like, why aren't we making changes? Even people that are good at singing, this is your life's work. It's your joy. It's your passion. You're good at it. And people love hearing you sing. Even that is turned into this perverse commodification of your passion. You have to sell X amount of tickets to shows. You have to produce X amount of songs. You have to do it the way the label tells you to do it. It is not okay. It is
Right.
so perverse. What is that?
I can speak to that because it took me a while to undo that. I had to unlearn it. The way that it's packaged to people is what I bought into, which is find your bliss and then do that for a living. Because we call it a living. You have to work for a living. Otherwise, you don't deserve to live. So they tell you.
Wait, I just want to take a pause.
Okay.
Let that, we can't blow by that. Otherwise, you don't deserve to live. Come
Right.
on. This
you have
is
to earn your living,
Yeah.
like literally
Yeah.
earn your right to live by working. And this is so ableist because the less capable you are of working, that means the less valued you are and the less deserving of living you are. Then you're just sort of this thing that we all have to carry instead of just seeing people as all being worthy of having a life and being able to live. Nobody should have to earn the right to live.
It's our birthright to access the resources of the land and the water.
We're brought into the world. Here we are. We have needs, and those needs need to be met regardless of what's going on. For me, though, when getting back to your point about the commodification, instead of saying, whoa, what is this system where we have to be able to be productive, like produce in order to exist? Then what we're told is, well, the best thing then is to find a thing you love and then turn that into the thing that becomes your work. And so you've got these people that are working to live. So they go to a job so that they can fund the things they really want to do on the other side of their life. And you've got the alternative, which is people that have a thing that they love and then they get to do that and it's their work. I guess of the two, that would probably be best, but it's fake that that's a binary choice. It's a product of the system that you have to make one of these two choices because we can't just simply let people be.
Exactly. And also I want to point out too, this idea of quote unquote human value. Many societies and many cultures agree humans inherently have value. Someone who is disabled and needs a mobility aid, for example, might not be able to work as a server in a restaurant, but that doesn't mean that they can't do other work. It's just that if the work that a person does, regardless of their abilities or disabilities, is not easily exploited for money, it's punished. And the things that are more easily exploited for money are rewarded. So the work that you do, like for me, for example, I'm a peer support specialist. I would be doing that for free. I love providing emotional support. I'm extremely empathetic. I would do it, but we have manufactured time scarcity in the society and it's still labor. Whether or not your work produces a high amount of monetary results, it's still your labor. It's still your labor. That's what I mean. Like, regardless of your ability, someone who needs mobility aids, for example, can still create value in being morally supportive, being a good cook, being a good gardener. These things are all work. Just because they're not easily commodified, they're punished. Different cultures have different norms. And I'm from this present culture, but I feel like I'm actually not. Like, I'm from the future. And I'm having to go back in time to where everything was still archaic and crude. And I'm on a mission to report back. Like, this is what these people did back then. It was so crude and archaic. And
Well, I mean, you did what you did to survive and to get by, like in these tribal societies, in these village societies. They just existed. You go out, you get food if you need food, water if you need water, you hunt if you want to hunt. And They just lived communally, but also individually. No heritable wealth, no monetary systems. And people would be like, yeah, but no progress, no modern hospitals. And yeah, I mean, in some ways that's going to suck. But at the same time, I mean, we have modern hospitals, and here in the US anyway, they're for profit. We complain constantly about the healthcare system. It's like, yeah, you can go and deal with certain things that you couldn't deal with without a modern hospital, but we're still going to die, and we're still going to get sick, and we're still going to have, all kinds of bad things happen to us. And
which is more humane, which is more quote unquote civilized. Having resources a certain percentage of the population cannot access,
right.
or a community that may not have all of the best cutting edge technology, but they know how to sanitize and they know how to allocate their resources according to need and ability.
Or like you're saying, nobody's denied what they need to survive. You have a society where everybody's pulling together, and what little they have, everybody has, as opposed to having, huge amounts of wealth that only a fraction of the population accesses, while the, 653,000 people go homeless when 17 million homes are vacant. Because everything we do, like you say, is commodified. We don't build homes to house people. We build homes for a profit. We don't produce food to feed people. We produce it for a profit. We'll put a lock on a dumpster so that somebody can't go into a dumpster behind a restaurant or a bakery and get food that's being literally thrown away.
Oh my God. Isn't that just so sickening?
Yes.
From that to my mom was a chef in Vegas for years, and that was one of the hardest parts of her job that she would tell me about. It was against the law. It was against regulation to not throw it in the trash. Yeah, that's a really serious problem.
So like you're saying, this is progress, right? This is progress.
Mm.
And we've progressed ourselves to burning the planet to a cinder. And now we're just seeing if there's some way we can delay it. That's progress.
When I listen to indigenous voices, they've been screaming this for centuries. I learned that when the Europeans came and they observed everything that was going on, what they observed was wilderness, untamed land, when actually that was the indigenous people's gardening. That was their agriculture. They did it in symbiosis and sustainability. It looked quote unquote like wilderness to them, but it was a sustainable, symbiotic, respectful, sustainable way to go about taking care of the population. That is extremely more civilized and humane. I would love to get the best parts of all cultures and actually create a world that is conducive to the well-being of not just human life, but pretty much all sentient life to live in symbiosis with the planet.
And it is interesting. There are entheogenic plants, right? Like plants that people take for, shamanistic purposes. And there are other fruits and things from Central and South America that when you start to look them up, they are considered to be cultivars, cultivated plants, but there's no known history of the cultivated plant. Like who cultivated it, we don't know. And so that's what you're saying. It's like it might look like the wild, but really this thing was developed. It isn't a purely non-man manipulated plant. Like somebody cultivated these plants, but we just don't know who, because it goes back to where it goes. So someone back when did this before colonists got here. And this plant that seems just like an indigenous wild plant of this region really is a cultivar.
I've been taking kratom for like 9 months. And for people who do not have addictive personalities, it has been so helpful. If your central nervous system is extra activated and extra intense, it really is very soothing and calming. It sort of allows your central nervous system to decompress. It's also addictive though. For people who need help, you can just get it at any smoke shop. It's been integral in helping me out. It's also got its drawbacks. It's addictive. It causes digestion issues. It's not cheap. And I cannot take kratom and then go teach chess. You got to take it if you have nothing to do. You gotta take it if you're gonna be super relaxed and do nothing, like no responsibilities. So I asked my community, if you were to define body doubling to a neurotypical person, what would you say? And my friend Lydia Moon and Star from the Body Double Besties Discord server, Care Web community. Body doubling is when we encourage positive social interactions by keeping each other company as we complete tasks. You could go on to say that in this time, being communal instead of solitary is almost a revolutionary act. But the main purpose of body doubling is simply to encourage that positive brain and emotional activity that we get when we connect with others, which in turn fosters greater motivation for personal maintenance and work.
It sounds like what you're saying is that in this support web, that there are people that are kind of working with each other to body double.
That's the entire purpose of the community.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
one of them, yeah. To support each other is the whole purpose of it, yeah.
Well, that's great. No, I mean, seriously, it's, helping people and connecting people, and it just sounds like a really good thing. I can see why it's so helpful to people.
I created it out of necessity, and come to find out a lot of people need it just as much as I do. So it's been really life-changing, to sound cliche as hell, but it has changed my life. I don't know how I got stuff done, walked my dogs, folded my clothes without a body double. It's so cool. And so body double is for light chit chat and tasking. We also have peer support, which is for when someone has more of an emotional problem. They might want a one-on-one conversation, because body doubling is often done with a group. And peer support is usually one-on-one, like, let's discuss this in depth. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? How can I help? And it can be very emotional. Yeah, it's been such an incredible, life-changing source of support.
Yeah, I think that's cool when you do a thing like that and you're kind of like, look, I need this. I don't know if anybody else needs it, but I would think other people might need it too. And then you get like huge feedback, huge support for people saying, yes, I'm so glad you did this. And this is helping me as well.
I got lucky. I got so lucky that the thing I need is pretty much resolved when someone provides to me the exact same thing I need. Like, the thing that we both need is solved by what the other provides. It's magic.
I'm glad that you were able to create this community and that it's not only helping you, but it's helping others.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad to talk with you, and so grateful for this opportunity to come and just spread the word about what we're doing. It means so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're totally welcome.
You're invited if you want. You're able to check out the links. One of them is my TikTok, one of them is my website, and you're able to join the Global Care Web. We got body doubling, we got peer support, we've got a book club, we've got mutual aid, and it's a way for us to help each other survive better in a world that is not inclusive of us, in a world that is not built for our survival. We have to figure out how to accommodate each other. We have to figure out how to accommodate ourselves to access a high quality of life that we all deserve. We deserve it just as much as anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks that are listening, if you follow the podcast, that Tiana will be supplying links that will be included in the description. That's the links that Tiana was referring to. Is there anything else, Tiana, that we need to cover or that you would like to add? Because it looks to me like we have gotten to the end of the agenda.
We got the mirror neurons. We got the body doubling is a modern adaptation. You just feel safer when you're in the presence of people. I'm all over the place.
Yeah, we are social animals.
Except for Tracy.
No, I'm social on Facebook.
You are. I am literally on a show being interviewed by you, so that counts.
All right. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you for coming on. I'm really glad that you were able to join me. And I hope
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope my audience gets something from this. If you feel like you would be helped by checking out some of these options and opportunities that are available through some of the things that Tiana is sharing, feel free to check them out. I encourage you to do so. And with that, I am headed out to go do some camping. And Tiana, I hope you have a productive day.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Counts as part of being productive. So even if that means resting. And thank you so much, Tracy. I hope that you have a wonderful, safe camping trip.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of At Home in My Head, exploring experience and meaning in individuals and the broader society. Like and subscribe if you enjoy these talks, and in the meantime, stay safe, be well, and never stop exploring.